If you did not make it to Float, the country's largest balloon convention, I'm taking you behind the scenes today. I'm telling you what stood out to me, what was new, what I loved, what I learned, and some of the big takeaways from Float. Quick pause because if you're running a small business and you feel like your brain is holding open 1,000 tiny tabs, this is for you. One of the biggest shifts that I've made in my business and that I've seen successful decorators make over and over is moving from doing everything manually to having a real system behind the scenes. That's why 17 Hats is our exclusive YouTube sponsor for 2026. 17 Hats puts your inquiries, contracts, invoices, questionnaires, emails, and workflows all in one place so you're not chasing clients, forgetting follow ups, or reinventing the wheel every single time someone books. Instead of asking, did I send that and what comes next? Your business just works. The best part, it doesn't make your business feel more robotic. It actually frees you up to do things that you are meant to do, like be creative, work with clients, spend time with your family, and all with less stress. If you're ready to stop duct taping systems together and start operating like a real business, head to 17hats.com to check it out. Once you have a system, everything else gets easier. All right, let's jump back in. All right, let's start high level. What is Float? If you're not familiar, it is a balloon convention. So there's a vendor room, there are competitions, there's parties, and there's, of course, classes. So I attended this year as an instructor, but also very much as an attendee. One of the perks of teaching at Float is that you get to be there and it is fun. It's a party. It was at a new location this year. It moved to Reno. So this is an event that moves around. I think mostly because it just keeps growing and we outgrew the previous hotels. So I've attended Float, I think 5 times, potentially 6. And it has been in St. Louis and then it moved to Chicago and now it's in Reno, Nevada. So for me, it was a direct flight from Chicago. Very convenient. I think people on the East Coast had a much harder time getting there. And in addition, we got hit with a snowstorm on the day that a lot of people were flying in. So some people did have travel issues. But in general, I really liked Reno. It was kind of mild temperature this time of the year in January. In Wisconsin, it was negative 30. In Reno, it was about 40 degrees. So, a nice treat. But I originally thought Reno was by Vegas. I thought it was going to be warm, and it's not. It's in the mountains. Everybody getting off the airplane had skis. They were going to Tahoe to, go skiing or snowboarding. So definitely not the warm desert that I was envisioning, but a really nice location. The hotel was huge, and part of what kind of was explained to me after the fact is that Float will always be someplace where there's a hotel because when you book the block of rooms, that's what brings the price down on the actual event spaces versus if you do it at a convention center, there's no hotel attached. I think I would hate that. I love being in the same building. I didn't leave. I was there for 5 days and I never left the building. So I liked that it was in a large space. The rooms were huge. They were huge. Like I thought I booked a suite by accident and it was just like a regular king room. It had a couch, it had plenty of room to spread out, and I needed room because I was kind of sorting my balloons and doing some prep in my specific space, but you could totally stay in one of these regular rooms with a roommate and you would be fine. It was a casino, so there was gambling, there were slot machines, there was smoking indoors, which wasn't everybody's favorite, but with the good comes some bad, and really, really roomy. Like I said, I think the biggest reason to moving to this location was space. And as someone who has been to Float as a participant, like just an attendee, also as an instructor, you need space in the classes, you need space for meals, you need space for prep. That's a lot of what people don't see, like the behind the scenes of like where is all of this stuff getting inflated? And I have been in prep rooms where you can't walk. And that's really frustrating. That's hard for the instructors to not have room to inflate their balloons. So this is the type of event space that I think they will never run out of space. And as someone attending the classes after instructing, I really liked that there was plenty of space in the classes. I know that that was an issue last time that I couldn't get into some of the classes that I wanted to take. So this time there was never an issue finding a seat in one of the classes that I either registered for or didn't register for and switched into later. There was plenty of room. So let's talk about checking in registration. So all of the registration is done ahead of time online, obviously. You pay in advance, you register months in advance, you book your room. And you get there, and there is a check-in desk where they present you with your badge and a swag bag. And I feel like the swag bag at Float always delivers. I like some of the weird things that brands put in there. Float gave us these really cute little scissors, which was great because I forgot mine. And as a teacher, that's a problem. So I had scissors. Burton and Burton gave like a neck pillow. From one of the vendor booths, I got like a little cute bag and a cell phone charger. There's always a ton of balloons and samples and goodies in the swag bag, and I brought most of it home. There have been events where I leave a lot of it behind because it doesn't fit into my luggage. This year I brought a lot home because I want to try out these new things. So I am so appreciative of all of the vendors who support the event and support us as attendees. It was a great swag bag this year. All right, let's talk about one of the biggest defining things afloat for me this year. That was the vendor room. So before classes or anything started, I was able to get into the vendor room, and you guys, they delivered. These vendors spend a lot of money to fly their team out, set up a booth, and kind of pitch their products, right? Like they're trying to be seen, they're trying to kind of connect with us, their customers. Holy cow, did they bring it this year? I felt like in the past, the vendor rooms were like pipe and drape. They'd have like a sign and a table and like maybe some decor. This year, it was all about the decor. Each booth was like professionally decorated by a balloon artist. It was so good. And that might seem obvious, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes if you're a distributor, you don't have people there that can actually like build, or you don't have time, or whatever. I felt like every single booth this year was professionally decorated by a professional balloon artist, and there were crazy things. I mean, there were like dresses made out of balloons. There were like twisting elements. There were LED lights. There were 260s used as like string art. I felt like the creativity was off the charts this year in the vendor room, and the space. It was huge. I think Having a Party, who sponsored me to teach, I think they got like 4 spaces, and they had like a Brooklyn Bridge constructed. They had couches so you could hang out. They were selling products. A lot of the vendors aren't actually selling merchandise. They're kind of just promoting. And I think that's great, getting to know the people that you order from, getting to know the face behind the brand, because the balloon industry is small. So a lot of times if you're talking to someone who's representing a business, they own that business. Like you're getting to know the people that are supporting you and that you are supporting when you purchase from them. So no notes on the vendor room. I loved it. Another tiny perk was that there was a coffee bar in there, and I think that's great. Like when you're in a hotel, even a gallon of coffee costs like $500. It's like the cost of stuff is crazy. So having a coffee bar free, and encouraging people to hang out and be in there, I think was really great. There was also an evening that I missed, unfortunately, and that was a late night vendor room, which I loved, and it was like a pajama party where you could go after hours, be in the vendor booth and hang out. I heard nothing but good things about that. I loved it, but I unfortunately missed it because I was prepping for a class. I was an instructor. So I, again, love that idea. Didn't personally get to participate, but I would be surprised if that doesn't come back in future years because I only heard good things about it. So vendor room, 10 out of 10, no notes. So once everyone kind of arrives, there's opening night. If you've never been, you're like, I don't know the flow of things. What do you do? There is a big like kickoff, and it's opening night, which is kind of funny because some people have been there for like 3 days already. If you're competing for designer of the year, you get there like 3 or 4 days early. If you're a vendor, you're there early. If you're an instructor, you're there early. There were so many people that had been there for a while before things officially kicked off. But opening night is kind of that big first party where like you're all in the room together. And I liked that because one of, I guess not a downside, but one of the shifts that happened this year is because the space was so large and spread out, you didn't just naturally see all your friends. Like previous hotels, you walked in and everyone was just like in the lobby bar. Or, there was one hall and all the classes were in that hall. You would see people. This was multiple floors, multiple areas. You could go the entire week and not see people that you knew unless you were looking for them. So that was definitely a change. I don't think it was good or bad, but I liked opening night because that was when we were all together in the same room. So that was kind of the first time that you like saw who was there. Also, huge shout out to Jam, who did the opening night stage decor for Batalic. They killed it. It was this really, really nice space theme. And I think they just did a great job of creating clean, well done decor to set the scene. And kind of opening night, the theme is usually orange. The float color is orange. So everyone wears orange. And there was like a slight alien vibe to this year. So some people really went all out. Other people just wore orange. Some people wore whatever they were wearing during the day, but it's a casual event. And there was a performer, there are awards, there's a welcome, presentation. But I love opening night. It kind of gets everyone excited for the week to come. Another really big part of opening night is the floaties, and that is where they present awards to people. So these are awards that you submit ahead of time. And I missed the deadline this year. I had a couple things I wanted to submit, but I missed the deadline because we were moving homes and it passed. But the thing that I think is cool about the floaties is that it costs money to submit. It's like $5 per entry, but that money goes to the scholarship fund. So I think that's really cool. It helps people get there. I believe maybe international delegates, that's like it's really expensive to get to float. I think the scholarships from the floaties potentially goes to help them. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what you have to pay to submit. And then in the evening at opening night, that's where the floaties are announced. So it's all different categories. It's like best bridal decor, best entry decor, best whatever. And these have all been pre-submitted and pre-selected. They announced the instructors, and that's kind of it. That's opening night. So I love a good kickoff party, and I love to see everyone that was there. I always feel like it's like summer camp for adults, right? You're in this different setting, you're with these new people, you're about to have a great week and make friends, and they kind of pump you up for what's to come. So opening night was the first time we were all together. The other thing that happened at opening night, which if you had told me that this was going to be the single greatest moment of float, I wouldn't have believed you. But there was a fashion show. Like, I literally just got goosebumps thinking about this fashion show. I am kind of a hater of balloon dresses. I've never worn one. I don't love them. I don't think they're marketable. Like, I'm never going to sell a balloon dress. So for me, it's always just been this thing where I'm like, I don't get it. Oh my gosh. I have never been put in my place so quickly than when these balloon dresses walked out on stage. There was an entire fashion show of the craziest stuff I have ever seen in my life. I would say it was the craziest stuff at the convention. The skill and technique during this fashion show, these dresses, my jaw was like on the ground. And I think that's what I love about Float is the caliber of artists. I love walking into a room and seeing stuff that I could never do. In this case, I was looking at stuff that I couldn't even comprehend. These dresses were the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. These itty bitty little bubbles, which I always joke like, if you're making it out of 260s, that's 2 extra inches on both sides of your hips. No woman wants to put that on. Every woman wanted to put these on. They were incredible. Like pictures don't do it justice. It was incredible. So the fashion show was not something that I had on my bingo card as being my biggest takeaway from Float, but holy cow, congratulations to those artists who spent like 3 days making these dresses so that they could walk across the stage for, 30 seconds. True dedication, amazing skill. I can't say enough about the fashion show. It was so, so incredible. And I think for me, it set the bar of what the week was going to be. It was like stuff I'd never seen before, stuff that I could never do in a million years. And I loved it. I loved it. I hope it comes back in 2 years. Now, getting into kind of the regular week, right? There's just classes. There's classes that you get from being a delegate, like you signed up and you attend the classes. There were lunch and learns, there were bonus classes, which were additional classes you could sign up for and pay for. And then I believe there were master classes, which happened before and after the event. Again, all of that information might not be correct, but there's all sorts of different classes. What you get when you sign up is like the standard daytime classes. And as an instructor, that meant I had to teach 2 different classes 2 different times. One of the classes that I taught was a foundations class. That's what it was called. And this was new to Float, and I loved it. I loved teaching it. I love that it exists. I loved the students. And these were people that signed up for the foundations track. So they kind of limited themselves. They weren't able to go to like everything all over the place, but they were in kind of the more beginner stage of their business, and they went in a almost like a cohort. They moved around from class to class in order of like a curriculum, like a pre-designed curriculum. So I jumped at the chance to teach one of these classes. I used to be a 6th grade art teacher, so my heart will always be foundations and the beginning steps, especially with balloons, because I think if you learn those basics, you're just in such a better spot as you progress in your skills. A little bit behind the scenes as an instructor, one of the things that I think I didn't anticipate was how long the prep was going to take. I typically teach like a business class and maybe like sort of hands on, but this time it was two 90-minute demo classes. So basically, you have to have it like a cooking show where like everything is pre inflated because you don't want to stand there and have people watch you inflate balloons for 90 minutes. They'd be pretty upset. So not only did I have to like inflate and prep and kind of think through the steps and like half build things so that I could like finish building them in front of people, but then I had to figure out how to then deconstruct them and then rebuild them for the second class. So the prep was more than I had anticipated. That's why I missed that pajama party where the vendor room was open, because I was lucky enough to have 8 a.m. classes, which again, 6 years ago, not even 12, 10 years ago, whenever I went to my first float, that was a very different Sarah. Now I am a mom and I like the 8 a.m. classes. Back then, 8 a.m. would have been like a curse because you're exhausted in the mornings from staying up all night at the bar. That's not the case anymore. I liked having the 8 a.m. classes, and the biggest perk of that was that I got to prep in my room the night before. It's midnight. I teach at 8 a.m., and I just finished inflating. So I happily inflated until 10 or 11 o'clock at night in my space so that at 8 I could just walk in and everything was ready. Versus having like a noon class, you had to prep all of your stuff in another area and then bring it downstairs and down the hall and get it into your room right before your class started. And I think that would have been so much more work. So I was very lucky to have both morning classes. I taught that foundations column class, and then I also taught a linking class, which was, I think it went well, but it was hard. I'll be honest. Personally, it was a little defeating seeing that I was teaching a linking class, which for me was a little bit more beginner. And then there were so many other linking classes by like world renowned artists that it did take a little effort to like hold my head up high after my classes. But people are at all different levels. I think my class was very usable, very sellable, but I really enjoyed going to some of the instructors that were creating things that were not very sellable, that were just insane and like out of this world in terms of scale, in terms of what they've created. I was really impressed. With that said, I only went to 2 classes, and that was a bit of a disappointment at first. But like I said, I didn't quite realize how much prep time, how much energy, and how much like mental capacity teaching would take. So after my classes, I kind of thought I would just pack up and go to the next class and fully be like a regular participant. I couldn't do it. I didn't have the energy. So after my class, you're chatting with people, then you have to take down your stuff, you have to pop your balloons, you have to pack up. And in that time, I kind of missed the entire lunch break. So then I needed to eat, and then I had missed the class, and then I got pulled into the vendor room, and then I missed the next class. So I only ended up going to 2 classes, but they counted. They were great. I went to Bubblegum, which I am obsessed with bubblegum balloons. They're from the UK, and their class was really really great. They have 45 full-time employees, so whatever they say, I'm going to listen. I am not the expert in the room when those ladies enter. And the other one I went to was Alexander Salamando. I don't know how to say his last name. It's Balloon Dog Russia, balloondog.ru on Instagram. And he does these insane builds in like shopping malls. And again, when am I going to learn from a decorator from Russia? So I was glad that I went to his class. I did learn a new technique that I'm going to try. I am lucky enough that I do have a very, very large install with a lot of creative freedom. So I am one of the people that can utilize and build those huge sculptures. So I'm going to push myself and try. So even though I went to only 2 classes during the week, I feel like I got usable tips, and I'm very excited to utilize those in my business. Sometimes I feel like I go to so many classes that it's almost overwhelming and I can't actually remember any of the things that I learned in any of those classes. So I was happy to just go to those few and take home a few tips and feel really inspired. The other thing that I love about conventions is obviously the social aspect. So for me, my biggest takeaways were in one-on-one conversations, new friends that I met, dinners that I went to with other ladies, getting to see people that have been friends online for like years and then getting to be with them in real life felt very, very cool. So for me, the socializing is a huge aspect. And I actually really liked this venue for that. There was a big central bar, which we used to have at the St. Louis location and didn't so much have at the Chicago location. But because this is a casino and everything was open basically 24 hours, there were places to congregate. And I really enjoyed that. And Float actually manufactured a place to congregate. They called it the Flop Zone, and they brought in couches and furniture. So there were areas to hang out with people. And that for me, that's a priority. Not just because it's fun, but that's where you meet new people, you network. If you ever need to ask a question or call in a favor, I just feel like it's so much easier to do that when you've had dinner, when you've exchanged numbers, when you are actually friends with people instead of just Instagram acquaintances. So I think the networking at conventions is really important, and that's my favorite part. So after a week of classes and making new friends, we conclude with a final night. And this year, the final night decor was dedicated to Tommy DeLorenzo, who was a close personal friend of mine. So I knew going in it could be rough. Um, I just felt like I was going to be pretty emotional. And I would say overall, it was pretty uplifting. It was pretty happy. Drew Scott, who is Tommy's husband, did the decor with his team. I was able to help a little bit, not as much as I wish I could have, but they created an entire room kind of inspired by and dedicated to Tommy and his career in balloons. And Tommy also won an award. I don't remember the actual name, but it was essentially like a lifetime achievement award in balloons, which is so deserving. And it was a really nice night. That is when a lot of the brands and manufacturers get up on stage and they have presentations, they have awards. Designer of the year is announced. You see who wins those competitions. But really, it's just like a nice conclusion to the week. Everyone gets really dressed up. There is an orange carpet where you can take photos with your friends. And then, of course, my favorite part is the dancing after. It's just such a fun way to kind of celebrate a really great week, get ready to leave in the morning, and kind of go out with a bang with a nice dance party. And then after, like I said, there was a lot of socializing. So even after the party ended, I think at 1 o'clock, a lot of people stayed up until 2, 3, 4. I think some people just stayed up until they caught their flights the next morning because they had early departures. So the socializing was so fun. The celebration was great. And at the end of the final night, they announced that Float 2028 will again be at the same location. It'll be at Reno. So if you've never attended, some of the footage, some of the video, it will be very representative of what it will be in 2 years when they host it again. So Float is an every other year convention. In between those years, so it's Float and then Offset is Fulcrum, which is a much smaller event with fewer balloons and it's very business focused. So Float, I would say it's all about balloons. Fulcrum is like panel discussions, much more rooted in balloon business. So I love Fulcrum. It is moving from St. Louis to uh Dallas, I believe, where there's a Great Wolf Lodge. And I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but they did announce the dates for Fulcrum and then the dates for Float. So if you feel like you missed out, no worries. There are many more conventions to come. I will definitely be at the next Float. I really enjoyed my time there and I enjoyed getting to learn new techniques and hang out with my friends. And hopefully, this was helpful if you've considered going or you didn't quite make it, or maybe you've never heard about this event and you are ready to go to your first balloon convention.